What we're going to take a look at here is finding trig values when we include the other trigonometric functions. Really to start, the basis for this is understanding this chart, which we've been working with for the last few weeks now. The sine and the cosine values we should be able to fill out relatively quickly for these values, understanding that sine of 0 is our y value be 0, at an angle of pi over 6 our sine value is 1 over 2, we have root 2 over 2, root 3 over 2, and then 1. And all of these values would be as follows. This is something we've done in class a few times, and there's another video on those values as well. Now, tangent, what we had seen in class was tangent is defined as sine of theta over cosine of theta, and really we can go through and just kind of derive that from all of these. We're doing 0 divided by 1 because our sine value divided by our cosine value is going to give our tangent value, so 0 over 1 ends up being 0. When I go through and I have 1/2 divided by root 3 over 2, I end up with 1 over root 3, which we have to end up simplifying to root 3 over 3. Root 3 over 3 there. Now I have root 2 over 2 divided by root 2 over 2. That should simplify to 1. Root 3 over 2 divided by 1/2 should end up giving me root 3. And again, these are all things that we have done in class. And then 1 over 0 should be undefined. That one should be undefined when we go through and do that. Now, we're going to end up using that for these values when we see secant of 7 pi over 6, cotangent of pi over 2, so on and so forth for these. And we're really going through process that we've been working with for the last few weeks. So looking at secant of 7 pi over 6, the first thing we have to identify is that this is going to be, that secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So what we can find is 1 over cosine of 7 pi over 6. That's what I can end up working with. So what I want to really find is what cosine of 7 pi over 6 is going to be equal to. And to do that, I think about what quadrant that's going to be in. It is in the third quadrant, which makes, if I look at all students take calculus, cosine should be negative. I'm going to look at my reference angle of pi over 6. My cosine value is root 3 over 2. So right now I have 1 divided by negative root 3 over 2. And I want to simplify this. So how I can do that, when I'm dividing by a fraction, it's like multiplying by the reciprocal. So I'm multiplying by 2 over square root of 3. When I go through, I should get negative 2 over the square root of 3. That's one that I want to end up simplifying. So I should multiply by root 3 over root 3, which gives me negative 2 times the square root of 3 over positive 3. So what that's telling me is secant of 7 pi over 6 is going to give me negative 2 times the square root of 3 over 3. Looking at the next one, I have cotangent of pi over 2. So cotangent is 1 over tangent of pi over 2. So looking at that, what I have is 1 divided by something that's undefined. So what that's going to come out to is undefined. There is no value. I can't divide 1 by some number that's not real. That's undefined. So that's going to continue to be undefined for that. And that's okay to get for your answers, and there's going to be some that are going to be undefined. And that's totally fine. Don't get too spooked just because you see that. Now looking at the next one, we have cosecant of 5 pi over 4. When I look at that, that's what I can solve is its reciprocal, 1 over sine of 5 pi over 4. So what I go through and I find is sine of 5 pi over 4. To find that, I think about what quadrant that's in. It's in the third quadrant. My sine value should be negative. And I look at its reference angle, which would end up being root 2 over 2. So I have 1 over negative root 2 over 2. I try to simplify this by multiplying by the reciprocal of the denominator. I would have 1 over 1 times negative 2 over square root of 2, which reduces to negative 2 over the square root of 2, which I could continue to simplify. Multiply by square root of 2 over square root of 2 to rationalize the denominator. What I end up getting there is negative 2 times square root of 2, all of that being over 2. And I can reduce this. I could say I have a 2 and a 2 here. That ends up simplifying just to negative square root of 2, which would be my final answer there. Alright, and my last one, cosecant of negative pi. So what I'm thinking about is 1 over sine of negative pi. So I got to think about what that value is going to end up being. This is one I got to think about the unit circle. Starting here, if I go in the negative direction, this would be my angle. Negative pi would be straight across. So looking at this point, I have negative 1, 0. The sine coordinate is my y coordinate, so that would be 0 here. I have 1 over 0. We know we can't have that. Can't divide something into 0 parts, so that would be undefined. And my final answer for that one would just be that cosecant of negative pi is undefined.